Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to a late episode of Before Coffee. We're here, it's Monday, and I'm only acting like I'm not tired, but I am actually very tired today. So let's go ahead and get into our news stories. Today on Before Coffee. Sinead O'Connor tribute appears in Ireland as funeral plans are announced.
And trucking firm that got $700 million bailout, U.S. bailout, declares bankruptcy.
Bodies of woman and toddler found after microphone sink off of Lampedusa.
Florida man went to extreme measures to survive loss at sea for 2 days.
U.S. dispatches warships after China and Russia send naval patrol near Alaska.
And in other Alaska stories, a glacial collapse causes massive flooding. Today on, what day is today? August it is? I don't know what day it is, man. This is great news. What day?
It's August 7th.
August 7th. We can edit this later, but today is August 7th, which I've recently discovered on August 7th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee.
It's just another day. Time is an illusion. It's actually whatever time you want it to be and whatever date you want it to be. We don't know when the original Earth began, so it's probably actually not even August. It's day, I don't know, 1 trillion of the Earth spinning around the sun.
Ask your dog what time it is, I always say.
He's already forgotten.
Your dog has no idea. Yep.
Well, speaking of time has passed since Sinead O'Connor has passed away at the young age of like 45 or something, or 47?
56.
56. The young age of 56. This is from Rory Carroll, the Ireland correspondent in The Guardian. Leading installation honoring Sinead O'Connor has been unveiled on the hillside overlooking the Irish seaside town of Bray, where she is to be buried on Tuesday. A message in 30-feet-tall letters spelling out Era Sinead that was visible from the air appeared on Sunday outside the County Wicklow town, south of Dublin. That was her home for 15 years. So giant letters, like you can see them from the plane, kind of giant letters. I'm probably pronounced that wrong. It's Irish. Ira Sinead with a heart.
Mm-hmm.
The tribute, which used the Irish name for Ireland, okay, so it's Ireland Loves Sinead, appeared 11 days after police found the singer unresponsive in the South London flat, causing shock and grief around the world. O'Connor was 56. A statement from O'Connor's family said she was buried on Tuesday and that the public will be able to pay final respects to her when the cortege passes the Bray seafront. So everyone's going to be standing there with their little signs going, "We loved you, you were amazing. Sorry that the music industry abandoned you for being brave." The route will begin at Harbour Bay Bar end of Strand Road and continue along the seafront to the other end of Strand Road, where Sinead and her family will continue on to private burial, the family said. Sinead loved living in Bray and the people in it. With the procession, her family would like to acknowledge that the outpouring love from the people of Co-Wicklow and beyond since she left last week to go to another place. No other details were released. O'Connor has used the Muslim name Shuhada Sadaqat before her death. The hillside sign appeared above a recently rediscovered Second World War navigational landmark, which reads Era, and was used to guide pilots. The initiative was a collaboration between the Dublin-based creative agency, The 10th Man, and a writing and mural specialist Max Sines. A drone filmed the installation from the air. The stand was made from recycled plastic and was to be removed on Sunday night. So much has been said about Sinead since her recent passing. I'm not sure what is left to say, said Richard Seabrook, the 10th Man's executive creative director. We just wanted to take the opportunity to mark the moment with a bold statement that symbolizes what she meant to this little country of ours. Last week, the Samuel Beckett Bridge of the Liffey was lit up with lyrics from O'Connor's seminal 1990s hit, Nothing Compares to You. I should have chose like one of her Irish songs or something. I feel like she probably had some Irish songs she could have.
She wrote her own songs. They should use her own lyrics instead of Prince's lyrics.
Yeah. So, that sucks, but it's the only song she's famous for, I guess, so.
That's ridiculous that she's famous for somebody else's song. They should have done Furs New Clothes. What's wrong with that song? She wrote that at least. It's a good song. It's got a lot of good lyrics. And it was a hit. I mean, the hit after. But again, MTV made things hits in those days. It doesn't happen anymore.
Right, free for your story.
Oh, okay. So in economic news, we have a story from the New York Times, and this is Alan Rappaport. 3 years after receiving $700 million in pandemic area lifeline from federal government, the struggling freight trucking company Yellow is filing for bankruptcy. After months-long negotiations between Yellow's management and Teamsters union broke down, the company shut its operations late last month and said on Sunday that it was seeking bankruptcy prosecution so it can wind down its business in an orderly way. And you don't want them rich guys at the top to miss out on those bonuses they get from shutting it down. It is a profound disappointment that Yellow announces that it is closing its nearly 100 years of business. The company's chief executive, Darren Hawkins, said in a statement, Yellow filed so-called bankruptcy Chapter 11 petition in federal bankruptcy court in Delaware. The downfall of the 99-year-old company will lead to the loss of 30,000 jobs and could ripple effects across the nation's supply chains. It also underscores the risks associated with government bailouts that are awarded during moments of economic panic. There you go. Nobody can get any student loan debt relief, but hey, rich guys are in trouble, bail them out. They mismanaged, bail them out. Yellow, which formerly went by the name of YRC Worldwide, received a $700 million loan during the summer of 2020 as the pandemic was paralyzing the U.S. economy. The loan was awarded as part of the $2.2 trillion pandemic relief legislation that Congress passed in the year, and Yellow received it on the grounds that its business was critical to the nation's security and because it shipped supplies to military bases. Since then, Yellow changed its name and embarked on a restructuring plan to help revive its flagging business by consolidating its regional networks of trucking services under one brand. As of the end of March, Yellow's outstanding debt was $1.5 billion, including about $730 million that it owes to the federal government. Yellow has paid approximately $66 million in interest on the loan, but it has repaid just $230 of the principal owed on the loan, which comes due next year. $230 on principal of a $700 million loan.
Wow.
Government doesn't give money away. So yeah. The fate of the loan is yet not clear. The federal government assumed a 30% equity stake in Yellow. Federal government assumed a 30% equity stake in Yellow in exchange for the loan. It could end up assuming or trying to sell off much of the company's fleet or trucks terminals. The White House did not respond to requests for comment ahead of the bankruptcy filing. The Treasury Department declined to comment. Yellow is the third largest freight trucking company as part of the industry known as less than truckload shipping. The industry has been under pressure over the last year from rising interest rates and higher fuel costs, which customers have been unwilling to accept. Those forces collided with an ugly labor fight this year between Yellow and the Teamsters Union over wages and other benefits. Those talks collapsed last month, and union officials soon after warned workers that the company was shutting down. I think that Yellow finds itself in a perfect storm, and they have not managed that perfect storm very well, said David P. Leibowitz, a Chicago bankruptcy lawyer who represents several trucking companies. The bankruptcy could create temporary disruptions for companies that relied on Yellow and may prompt more consolidation in the industry. It also could lead to temporary high prices as businesses find new carriers for freight. These inflationary prices will certainly hurt the shippers and hurt the consumer to a certain extent, said Tom Nightingale, Chief Executive AFS Logistics, who suggests that prices would likely normalize within a few months. Jack Atkins, a transportation analyst at the financial service firm Stevens, said that Yellow's troubles began mounting for years in the wake of financial crisis. Yellow is engaged in a spree of acquisitions that it failed to successfully integrate, Mr. Atkins said. The demands of repaying that debt made it difficult for Yellow to reinvest in the company, allowing rivals to become more profitable. Yellow was struggling to keep its head above water to survive. It was harder and harder to be profitable enough to support the wage increases they needed. There will be 10 more paragraphs because
about how they'd suck and that they deserve all our sympathies.
That's about the story about Yellow, and there's going to be freight disruptions as they find other trucking companies, and truckers out of work are going to be out of work until they can find work. But right now, there's a trucker shortage. I don't think they better work long.
Yeah, they'll probably find somewhere to work, hopefully.
If you're out of work now, you're just not trying, because there's a shortage of actual employees in this country. And there's very few states that have enough workers to fill their jobs, as we've covered last week. Your story.
Yeah, it reminds me of a funny meme I saw over the weekend, which was America. We have lowest inflation, we have an employment shortage, and our unemployment has been the lowest ever. We win again, right? Europe. And then Europe replies, I've been on vacation until September 30th. Thank you for your email. I will reply shortly when I return. Really great. Just kind of like, that's nice for you guys, but we have paid vacation leave. We can leave and go somewhere for a month. So talk to me when you have that.
Yeah, that doesn't really. So it's like, everything fell apart at work. I was gone. Oh, yeah, okay. Here's my pictures.
Some more solemn news. Italy's Coast Guard is suffering more tragic news as bodies of a woman and toddler were recovered by the Italian Coast Guard after 2 shipwrecks overnight off the southern island of Lampedusa. This is from Angela Giuffrida in Rome. 57 people were rescued and more than 30 are believed to be missing as of Sunday afternoon in what was described as more tragic news regarding those making the perilous journey across the Mediterranean in search of refuge in Europe. Because, let's remember, the planet is very hot and people don't want to die. Citing accounts from survivors, Italian media reports that the 2 boats had departed from Sfax in Tunisia and had sunk in the rough sea. The first vessel had 48 people on board, of whom 43 were rescued. The second boat was carrying 42 passengers, of whom 14 were rescued. Wow, unlucky for that second one. Many of those on the boats were believed to be from sub-Saharan Africa, according to Italian media, where it's very hot and there's no food and all it is desert. Survivors were rescued about 25 miles south of Lampedusa, which for years has been the first port of call for thousands of people making the treacherous journey by sea from North Africa. The child victim was just 18 months old, according to Italian news reports. The Italian Red Cross, which runs the Asylum Seeker Reception Center in Lampedusa, said on Sunday that the survivors were drained from the shipwrecks and suffering from psychological trauma. Rosario Valastro, the president of the Italian Red Cross, told ANSA news agency this is more tragic news regarding the lives of people who take long journeys in prohibitive conditions. 20 people have been stranded for 2 days on a high cliff after the boat they were on crashed into the rocks off Lampedusa. Rescue efforts have been hampered by strong winds, Corriere della Sera reported on Sunday. According to the Interior Ministry figures, over 78,000 people have landed in Italy after crossing by boat from North Africa since the start of the year, more than double the arrivals during the same period in 2022. That's because this year has been incredibly hot. It's almost every day that we have to cover how hot the planet is. The vast majority of 42,719 had set off from Tunisia when the EU last month signed a €1 billion deal to help stem irregular migration. The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, whose far-right government has imposed tough restrictive measures against NGO rescue ships, was a key protagonist of the deal. An Interior Ministry spokesperson recently told The Guardian, "Those who flee war are entitled to seek asylum in Europe. That is sacred, but economic migrants who are here illegally must be returned to their countries of origin." I don't think they're economic migrants. I think they're just don't want to say that they're climate migrants. That's what they are. It's hot. People can't work because they'll die if they go outside.
Maybe that's it.
Most of the arrivals in Italy so far this year have landed in Sicily, and in particular Lampedusa, where there's more than 2,000 people have arrived in the past few days after being rescued by Italian patrol boats and NGO ships. The reception center in Lampedusa was packed with 2,412 people on Sunday, more than 2,000 above its official capacity, ANSA reported. The anti-immigration measures imposed by Meloni's government since it took power in October, including fining NGO rescue ships up to €50,000 if they flout a rule to request a port and sail to it immediately after undertaking one rescue instead of remaining at sea to rescue people from other boats in difficulty. Wait, let me read that again. So they can be fined up to €50,000 if they flout a rule to request a port and sail to it immediately after undertaking one rescue. So the idea is that they might be rescuing multiple people from different shipwrecks, right? And they can get fined if they do that. But what they're supposed to do is, that's a shipwreck, we saved everyone from that shipwreck, we're gonna leave, go to port, and then come back. But instead of doing that, they're trying to save as many people as possible. I see. And they're getting fined for saving as many people as possible, because that's a different shipwreck. I see. Several rescues have therefore resulted in ships being granted ports to central and northern Italy, forcing them to make longer journeys and therefore reducing their time at sea, saving lives. NGO group Open Arms said on Sunday that it has finally begun the disembarkation of 195 people rescued at sea in southern Italy port of Brindisi after more than 2 days of sailing in rough seas. 93 people died when the boat they were traveling on sank in the rough seas of Cutro, a beach town in Calabria, in late February. It was the deadliest migrant shipwreck to occur this close to Italy's shore since 368 people lost their lives after a sinking off Lampedusa in October of 2013. So don't forget, we're still talking about it. We're not getting distracted by billionaires sinking their Titanic submarine. We're still talking about all the people in the Mediterranean that are just trying to not die. On land and at sea. Your story.
And more sea rescue news. And this is about a guy fishing. Not so dramatic. But again, if you're dying at sea, it doesn't matter why you're dying at sea. This is from CNN. Oh boy, look at all this story. It's Raja Razik, Sarah Smart, Kamala Bernal, and Sarah Moon. Okay. Charles Gregory headed out for an early morning fishing trip up Friday off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida, something he'd done many times before. But the tide rose quicker than he thought. Then a wave hit his 12-foot John boat, a lightweight and flat-bottomed vessel, and knocked him into the water. He managed to get back on board, but was quickly taken out to sea. For nearly 2 days, the 25-year-old struggled to stay alive under the brutal Florida sun as he clung to the partially submerged boat, suffering jellyfish stings and spotted sharks. His father, Raymond, told CNN on Sunday. He was scared to death, Raymond said. He said he had more conversations with God in that 30 hours than he had in his whole life. Boat crews pulled Charles from the Atlantic Ocean Saturday morning after air crews spotted him about 12 miles offshore, the U.S. Coast Guard said in a news release. Footage released by the Coast Guard showed the dramatic rescue of Charles seated in the inundated boat, its bow tipping beneath the surface of the water before crews reached him. Its bow. It started Friday around 4 a.m. ET ET, Eastern Time. Charles was spotted leaving the lighthouse park boat ramp in the John boat, the Coast Guard said. As the tide took him out to sea, Charles fought to hang on to the boat and stay alive while in the direct sunlight, his father said. The nearly 2 days included desperate attempts by Charles to keep the boat afloat, even remove the vessel's motor. It also led to frantic efforts to get help, removing his swimming trunks to use to flag down nearby boats and aircraft, his father said. But the night was the worst. At night, being sunburnt and the wind would be blowing, he said it was freezing cold out there in that water. Charles is now at home resting. He's exhausted. He is dehydrated and is suffering from rhabdomyolysis, which causes the breakdown of damaged muscle and leads to muscle cell contents into the bloodstream, something the Centers for Disease Control Prevention says can be worsened by dehydration. Rhabdomyolysis. Can't give things normal short names, can they? Raymond said he's happy to have his son back and thankful to see all the search teams and community for safe returns. At the end of the day, the whole moral of his story is don't give up. Emergency services met Gregory at Volano Beach Fishing Pier after he was rescued, the Coast Guard said in a release. While this case resulted in the rescue of Charles from a life-threatening situation, it highlights the importance of having safety gear on board and being prepared for the worst. Coast Guard Sector Jacksonville Commander Nick Barrow said, if you plan to head to the water, remember to have a life jacket, VHF marine grade radio, signaling devices, and emergency personal locator beacon to contact first responders in case you are in need of assistance. This guy got really lucky. He had none of those things. He might have had a life preserver. I don't even think he had that. Okay, your story.
Wow. Very lucky and very crazy. But I would probably also be praying to God. You get really delirious out there in the ocean as well. There's nothing to see. You're just getting attacked by animals who are like, what's that over there? Like, leave me alone. I just want to go home.
Seagulls.
Yeah,
whatever.
Seagulls are so annoying as well, squawking. Okay, in some U.S. military news, U.S. is dispatching warships. This is from Maya Yang on The Guardian. The U.S. dispatched 4 Navy warships as well as a reconnaissance airplane after multiple Chinese and Russian military vessels carried out a joint naval patrol near Alaska last week. Uh-oh. That one movie about China invading America might come true. I forget what it's called, The Red Scare. I can't remember what it's called. Red Alert? I don't know. I don't remember.
Red Dawn? That wasn't China.
Red Dawn. That's Red Dawn's gonna come true. The combined naval patrol, which the Wall Street Journal first reported, appeared to be the largest such flotilla to approach U.S. territory, according to experts that spoke to the outlet. It's a historical first, Brent Sadler, a retired Navy captain and senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, told the Journal. He also said that the flotilla's proximity to Alaska was highly provocative maneuver given Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine and political tension between the U.S. and China over Taiwan. The flotilla has since left. The U.S. Northern Command confirmed that the combined Chinese and Russian naval patrol, telling the Journal, air and maritime assets under our commands conducted operations to assure the defense of the United States and Canada. The patrol remained in international waters and was not considered a threat. The command did not specify the number of vessels which made up the patrol or their exact location. A U.S. senator from Alaska said the flotilla in question was made up of 11 Chinese and Russian warships working in concert near the Aleutian Islands. 4 destroyers and a Poseidon P-8 patrol airplane made up the U.S. response to the Chinese and Russian flotilla. In a statement to the Journal, the spokesperson of the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., Liu Pengyu, said that the patrol is not targeted at any third party. According to the annual cooperation plan between the Chinese and Russian militaries, naval vessels of the two countries have recently conducted joint maritime patrols in relevant waters in the western and northern Pacific Ocean. Pengyu said, this action is not targeted at any third party and has nothing to do with current international or regional situations. The Journal reported that the U.S. destroyer sent to track the flotilla were the USS John S. McCain, the USS Benfold, the USS John Finn, and the USS Chung Hoon. Alaska Senators Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan have since responded to the joint Chinese and Russian patrol that came close to the Aleutian Islands. by saying that they are monitoring the situation closely for their constituents. Murkowski said, "We've been in close contact with the leadership for several days now and received detailed classified briefings about the foreign vessels that are transiting U.S. waters in the Aleutians. This is a stark reminder of Alaska's proximity to both China and Russia, as well as the ancestral role our state plays in our national defense and territorial sovereignty." Sullivan echoed the sentiment of his fellow Republican Murkowski, saying, "The incursion by 11 Chinese and Russian warships operating together off the coast of Alaska is yet another reminder that we have entered a new era of authoritarian aggression led by the dictators in Beijing and Moscow." All right, calm down.
No.
That's a bit sensationalist. It's aggression! Actually, it was completely passive because they were doing maneuvers. They weren't shooting anything. They weren't firing their missiles at the coast of Alaska. That's aggression. You know? They fired missiles at our submarines. That's aggression. He went on to compare the situations in one last September when a single U.S. Coast Guard cutter spotted a total of 7 Chinese and Russian naval ships near Alaska. You mean like around the same time this year, they did the same joint operation? Wow, America has never done those before. Doesn't know anything about joint operations.
We don't know about Putin, man. He probably want Alaska back.
Hey, I'm okay with being on the defensive, but saying it was an authoritarian aggression is a bit too much for me. That's all. They didn't do anything aggressive. Last summer, Chinese and Russian navies conducted a similar operation off the Coast Guard of Alaska, Sullivan said. Even though our response was tepid, I strongly encourage senior military leaders to be ready with much more robust response. Such another joint Chinese-Russian naval operation occurred off our coast. Which I completely agree with. Yeah, makes sense. Just don't call it an authoritarian aggression. That's... For the reason, I was heartened to see that the latest incursion was met with U.S. Navy destroyers, which sends a strong message that the United States will no longer hesitate to protect and defend our vital national interests in Alaska. That's good to know. Because, yeah, Red Dawn would be awful something. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm pretty doubtful that would occur, but... Well, the U.S. is the biggest military in the world, so you're poking at the dragon, so to... Anyways, that's the end of my story. On to yours.
All right. We seem to be following each other because then we're going to stay in Alaska, which is a very, very sparsely populated state. I don't think even Americans realize it. Generally, nobody really lives there. I was just looking up their capital city, Juneau, has 31,000 people in it.
Wait, Anchorage isn't their capital? Crazy.
No, Anchorage is their biggest. You need to go back and restudy your geography. No, it's Juneau. Anchorage ain't that big.
California.
Okay, so this is from CNN again. Elizabeth Wolf and Jameel Lynch. Record-breaking river flooding has destroyed at least 2 structures in Juneau, Alaska, and prompted local evacuations after sudden outbursts from a glacier-dammed lake inundated region, say officials. City officials declared local emergency on Sunday as the flooding made the banks of the Mendenhall River unstable and blocked some roads with silt and debris. Although river levels continue to fall, at least 2 structures have been lost to the river and others are at risk and have been evacuated, the city and the borough of Juneau said in news release Sunday morning. The torrent originated from the Suicide Basin, nice name for a basin, the Suicide Basin, an ice and water filled basin adjacent to Juneau's Mendenhall Glacier, and flowed into Mendenhall Lake and River, causing the lake to crest Saturday night, according to the National Weather Service in Juneau. The lake crested at a record 14.97 feet, far higher than the previous record of 11.99 feet set in 2016. The Weather Service said. By Sunday night, the lake had lowered to around 7 feet and is expected to drop below 6 feet by Tuesday night, Weather Service data shows. Though the Suicide Basin has been releasing outbursts of Glacial Lake into the adjacent lake and river since 2011, the Weather Service warned that the current flooding is affecting areas that have not previously seen this flooding. Due to unstable riverbanks, city officials strongly advise residents against going near the river. They also warned that some fuel tanks and hazardous material containers were impacted by the flooding. Oh, great. Water mixed with hazardous material. Utilities had been restored at a majority of locations in the midday and Sunday, and the city said in its release, crews were still working to clear blocked roadways Sunday afternoon. The lake's level continued to recede Sunday. The Weather Service announced its flood warning had expired. Flooding is no longer expected to pose a threat, but the hazards persist near the Mendenhall River. Heed remaining road closures, stay out of the river and away from unstable banks, and give plenty of space and resources to provide assistance. That is the story about the latest glacier melt.
Dangerous, I guess. Very dangerous. Okay. In culture news, Tory Lanez is to be sentenced for shooting singer Megan Thee Stallion. December 2022, Lanez was found guilty, or is it Lanez? Tory Lanez. Lanez was found guilty of 3 felonies in relation to the shooting. This is from Abine Clayton in Los Angeles. Musician Tory Lanez is set to be sentenced on Monday for shooting fellow artist Megan Thee Stallion in 2020. Lanez, whose legal name is Daystar Peterson, was found guilty in December 2022 of 3 felonies in the shooting of which left Megan Thee Stallion wounded with a bullet fragment in her feet. Prosecutors have called for Lanez to be sentenced to 13 years in prison for the offense and what they have described as a subsequent campaign of misinformation waged through hip-hop blogs and music meant to decimate Megan Thee Stallion's credibility. Lanez's defense team has called for probation and a residential drug treatment program that would help the artist deal with alcoholism, which they say he developed to cope with childhood trauma. Sentencing will mark the end of the polarizing 3-year saga that played out in court, the artist's social media and on hip-hop gossip blogs. Prosecutors said it began on July 12, 2020, with a small pool party at Kylie Jenner's mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Megan Thee Stallion, whose legal name is Megan Heat, arrived at the home a few hours before Lanez. The pair, along with Kelsey Harris and Lanez's security guard, left in a black SUV to drop Megan Thee Stallion and Harris off at the rental home where they were staying. During the drive, an argument broke out between the musicians, prosecutors have said, and Lanez's bodyguard pulled over onto a quiet street in the hills where Megan Thee Stallion exited the vehicle. As she walked away from the car, the prosecutors said Lanez pulled out a handgun and fired it toward the ground in her direction. George Megidesyan, Lanez's, that's a really hard, it's Megdesyan, Lanez's defense attorney, argued during the trial that Harris was the only one who shot Megan Thee Stallion. After Lanez's revealed that he and Megan Thee Stallion had been romantically involved. The incident made headlines and fueled weeks of speculation, but it wasn't until August 20th, 2020 that Megan Thee Stallion said on Instagram Live that Lanez had shot her. Lanez had maintained his innocence, accusing Megan Thee Stallion of lying about being shot, and claimed that her Rock Nation management team was trying to frame him. Megan Thee Stallion has vehemently denied ever being in romantic relation with Lanez, including during a high-profile interview with Gayle King, who did testify that the two had been intimate after bonding over their mother's death. Man, it's another case of you led me on. Sorry, I thought we were just humans having sympathy for each other, but you just can only think about having sex with people. That's not my problem.
Right.
During the trial, Megan Thee Stallion told the jury that she had lied at first out of embarrassment, that she was disgusted to have shared her body with someone who would shoot her. I don't want to be on this earth, she said at one point during a day-long testimony. I wish he would have shot and killed me if I knew I'd have to go through this torture. The jury deliberated for one day before convicting the 30-year-old Canadian rapper of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, having a loaded, unregistered firearm in a vehicle and discharging a firearm with gross negligence. After the conviction, through the appeals and now in a 41-page sentencing memo, Lanez has continued to maintain his innocence. His attorneys have argued that Lanez's alcohol abuse disorder played a factor in his actions. Megan Thee Stallion has slowly returned to the public eye in recent months and hasn't spoken publicly about Lanez or the shooting since April at an interview with LA Magazine. I view myself as a survivor, because I have only truly survived the unimaginable. Not only did I survive being shot by someone I trusted and considered a close friend, but I overcame the public humiliation of having my name and my reputation dragged through the mud by that individual for the entire world to see. Yeah, a true betrayal. Lawyers for Linez and Megan Thee Stallion did not respond to a request for comment. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fucked up to be betrayed and be like, oh, we got into a little fight, and he took it all the way up here and shot at me. And then he decided to be like, oh, there's no reason for that to happen. She's a big fat liar. I remember seeing it on Twitter. So many people going, Megan Thee Stallion is stupid and she's a liar. It's like, why are you siding with this random ass guy who, like, it was a mess, and I'm glad it's over now. The courts have, justice has, whatever,
In
proceed.
prison.
Yeah. On to this day in history.
Of this day in history again. I'm going to just rag out all the reporters out there because I was looking for stories this morning and they're all politics and I don't fucking care. There's no election this year, folks. There's no election. There's just no election.
It's
Stop
next
covering
year.
the election.
Yeah.
Stop covering it. You people are morons. Oh, and also they report tweets and Twitter, you know, the true social tweets. So it's like news. It's like, you just feed the beast. You just keep putting on the same story over and over, and you repeat tweets as news, and they're not news. People can just read the tweets if they want to. If people want to be on Twitter, they'll just read the shit. You don't report it to us. We can find that our own. Reporters are lazy. That's my little lecture for this morning. Reporters are lazy. Read, not even tweet, whatever they're called now. Okay, this day in history. Hungarian Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who purportedly tortured and murdered hundreds of young women. Well, we got to commemorate her, of course. Let's just go on down.
Totally.
1782, George Washington ordered the creation of the first U.S. military decoration, the Badge of Military Merit, which is today called the Purple Heart. And in 1819, the group of South American insurgents under Simón Bolívar defeated Spanish forces at the Battle of Boyacá, which freed New Granada, which is now Colombia and Venezuela, from Spanish control. In 1876, dancer and Countess Mata Hari, who became a synonym for seductive female spy, was born in Leeuwarden, Netherlands. I probably pronounced that wrong. In 1888, there you go. The first of the murders committed by Jack the Ripper took place in this day in 1888. So we've been looking for that guy ever since. 1932, Abibi Bakila, a Ethiopian runner who was the first marathon athlete to win 2 Olympic marathons, with Mont, it says. Uh-oh, unstable internet connection. You see me?
You're good.
Okay. At the Olympics in London in 1948, track and field athlete Fanny Blankers-Cohen, who was pregnant with her 3rd child, helped the Dutch team win a 4x4 relay, becoming the first woman to capture 4 gold medals in a single game, and she was carrying a baby with her on the trip.
Wow, I'm a proud Dutch person right now.
Nothing to do with this. You're proud. 1957, Oliver Hardy of the comedy team Laurel and Hardy died in North Hollywood, California on this day, sad day. In 1960, Côte d'Ivoire gained independence from France. I don't know how to pronounce that because it's French. It's 1974, French-born Philippe Petit walked out on the high wire between the newly built World Trade Center towers in New York City at about 1,350 feet above the ground. He was arrested, but the charges were later dismissed. So that's cool. I remember that. Philippe Petit. 1978, U.S. President Jimmy Carter declared a federal health emergency in Love Canal, a neighboring neighborhood in Niagara Falls, New York, following the leakage of toxic chemicals buried under the community. It was the worst environmental disaster involving chemical waste in U.S. history. Let's build a village on top of that waste. In 2007, American baseball player Barry Bonds hit his 756th career home run, breaking the record set by Hank Aaron. In 2015, American golfer Louise Suggs, a pioneer of women's golf who who founded, it said co-founded, looks like confounded.
I was going to say, what?
Who co-founded the LPGA, the Ladies Professional Golf Tournament. Well, she died at this age, at 91, on this day in 2015.
That's pretty nice.
And, and this date in history, the featured event, 1942, Japanese airfield on Guadalcanal seized by Allies. And the Allies' first major offensive in the Pacific theater during World War II, U.S. Marines on this day in 1942 landed on Guadalcanal and captured the airfield from Japan, sparking a battle that lasted some 6 months. Famous birthdays: Emil Nolde, German artist, was born on this day in 1867. Sidney Crosby, Canadian ice hockey player, was born on this day in 1987. Charlize Theron was born on this day in 1975. David Duchovny from The X-Files was born this day in 1960. And we already covered the other birthdays. And what day is it? Not too many days. It is these three things. It is National Lighthouse Days. Who doesn't love lighthouses? It's also National Purple Heart Day, as we went back and George Washington created that medal on this day. And it is National Sea Serpent Day. Also, it's four things. National Sea Serpent Day, so be nice to your sea serpents.
Yeah, especially with all that shipwrecks happening. Yeah, they need it.
Yeah, National Raspberries and Cream Day. So that's it. Today, August 7th. And now I know what day it is. It is August 7th.
Did you say blackberries and cream day?
Raspberries and cream.
Raspberries and cream. Okay, well I'm gonna go to the store and get some raspberries cream. This has been Allison from the Netherlands, who is ready to see what the rest of the week is gonna bring. And see ya tomorrow.
I just think it's fitting that it's National Lighthouse Day and National Sea Serpent Day.
Yes.
Because if you're very fitting. All the shipwrecks. And this is Roger United States going to take his sea serpent for a walk. On today, on Comprehensive News for Planet Earth, on August 7th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.